Here are my top 12 tips for the best perfectly cooked Instant Pot rice and mistakes to avoid. Let's start with the first one. The first tip is to always rinse and wash your rice. This helps not only remove dirt, debris, or anything else that's in the bag, but it also takes the starch off of the rice, so then your rice becomes fluffier and it has a better end result. I always wash my rice until it runs clear, and instead of using a colander like this that just has kind of a meshy it's just a colander, I use a special rice rinsing basket. This is my special rice washing basket, and I use it almost every single day because we eat a lot of rice around here. There are a couple features that really help make rice easier if you're using, if you're making rice all the time and you're washing it all the time. This is like the best tool, and it's super cheap too. So the first thing is it has these ridges on the edge of the bowl, so it kind of helps to catch and wash and agitate that rice. The second feature that I really like is that the bottom here has holes, and it also has kind of a bumpy texture, so it helps to wash the rice as well. The holes at the bottom of this basket make it so while you're washing your rice, there's still water in the bowl, but it's leaking out at a slower rate than in a colander. This is the perfect ratio of having water in the bowl to actually rinse, but also removing the starchy water, and it's honestly just phenomenal. The last part is this little part that you pour into the sink when you're getting just those last little bits of water out of the rice rinsing bowl. It catches all the rice, so you're not wasting anything, but you're getting all of that excess liquid out. The second tip is to always use the correct water to rice ratio. Of course, this is very important, but in pressure cooking, since there's not really any evaporation of the water, you really have to get this right in order to make your rice perfect. For most types of white rice, I recommend a ratio of 1 cup of rice to 1 1/4 cups of water. For brown rice, I recommend a ratio of 1 1/4 to 1 1/2. Depending on the type of rice you're making, especially if you're using a short or medium grain versus a long grain rice or a wild rice or a quinoa or something, it might be a little bit different. But depending on how you prefer your rice, whether you like it a little bit stickier or if you like it a little bit drier, then you can adjust the ratio to your taste. But I always recommend starting out with a 1 to 1.25 ratio of rice to water. Next, if you like, add a little bit of salt and fat to your rice to make it just a little bit better flavor, a little bit extra. So I always just use Redmond real salt, as you know. If you're using the rice to go under something like a sauce or a gravy, then it doesn't make as big of a difference. But if you're enjoying the rice just straight and as is, then a little bit of salt and a little bit of fat definitely goes a long way. Next, make sure that you get the cooking time and the pressure setting correct on your Instant Pot. For most white rice, such as long grain white rice, basmati rice, or jasmine rice, use 3 minutes at high pressure with a 10-minute natural pressure release. For long grain brown rice, cook for 15 minutes on high pressure with a 10-minute natural pressure release. For wild rice, I've tested 20 minutes to be the best pressure cooking time at high pressure with a 15-minute natural pressure release. And for quinoa, use 2 minutes at high pressure with a 10-minute natural pressure release. I like to use high pressure on all of these rices, but if you have a really delicate kind of rice, or if you test it on low pressure and you prefer it that way, do it that way if you like. Next is the correct natural pressure release. Now, I just told you the pressure cooking and natural pressure release times. What you might not know is that natural pressure release time, that 10 to 15 minutes after the rice is done pressure cooking, is just as, if not more important than the initial pressure cooking. After the pressure cooking is done, it's really important to let that rice gently continue to cook with that natural pressure release so it steams through and it cooks through. If you do just the 2-minute cook time without a natural pressure release, then the rice will not be cooked and you will not be happy about it. Number 6 is don't keep your rice in the Instant Pot on the keep warm setting for too long. After your rice is done pressure cooking and it goes into that natural pressure release cycle, it's automatically put on the keep warm cycle. Now, it should definitely be left alone for those 10 to 15 minutes after pressure cooking. However, I do not recommend leaving it on that keep warm setting for longer than maybe 30 to 45 minutes because your rice will dry out and it might stick to the bottom of the pot, and it kind of continues to just cook a little bit from the bottom. So make sure that you don't leave it on that keep warm setting for too long. This next tip is to let your rice sit uncovered and untouched for just a couple of minutes before you fluff your rice. This helps to kind of help remove any extra moisture. It kind of helps to let it breathe after pressure cooking, and I promise it will just help with the overall texture of the rice. I always do this. The next tip is to make sure that you fluff your rice after cooking. Now, I know this doesn't seem like a super important step, but it's actually really important to have the best texture, the best fluffiness, and to kind of distribute the moisture and the grains of rice so you have the perfect Instant Pot rice. I like to just use either a fork or a rice paddle to kind of fluff up that cooked rice. This helps to separate the grains of rice and to make it fluffier and prevent sticking. The next tip along with that is when you are serving your rice, try and use a rice paddle. I have like a million of these little things, and this one's a cute little guy with a smiley face, and it has a little base that you can stand on the counter. But these are specifically designed to help kind of gently transfer the rice from the cooking vessel, from the Instant Pot or the rice cooker to your serving dish or plate. After your rice is cooked, then it should be handled very gently and lightly to keep it nice and fluffy. If you use something that's going to mash the rice and make it sticky and yucky, you don't want that. So make sure you use a nice, good quality rice paddle. Along with that tip, if you don't want to have sticking with your rice, you can just run it under some water really quick or keep it in a little bowl of water, and that will help the rice from sticking to your rice paddle. Next is to make adjustments and make note of those for wherever you live and whatever preference you have for the kind of rice you use. There's a million different kinds of rice, and everyone lives in a different location and in a different elevation. This is what works best for me, but if your rice always turns out super dry with my measurements and my time, try and adjust just 1 minute at a time or 1/4 cup of water or liquid at a time, either up or down depending on how sticky you like it. Add more water if you want it stickier, or if you want it a little bit drier, then use less water next time. Next is to add some flavor enhancements to your rice. So I have tons of different recipes using rice in the Instant Pot, but once you get comfortable using rice in the Instant Pot, you can see that there are a million possibilities. So you can add rice, and then you can also add vegetables and chicken or other protein and cook it directly in your Instant Pot. If you want some flavored rice, you can make something like a cilantro lime rice, which is really simple. I just add citrus juice and some chicken broth and cilantro, and it makes it so good for Mexican night. Or you can just add a different kind of broth or bone broth to add a little bit more flavor and protein to your rice, as well as herbs, seasonings, anything that you want to make your rice just a little bit more unique and delicious. Another important thing is to make sure that your Instant Pot lid and your sealing ring are clean. Since rice is very plain and it can kind of take on the flavors and aromas of other things around it, especially the cooking vessel, make sure you give your Instant Pot lid a little sniff before you start pressure cooking with it when you're making rice, because if it smells really, really strong, like a curry or a pot roast, I would recommend just giving it an extra wash before you cook your rice. Otherwise, your rice will definitely have a little hint or flavor of that scent and that aroma, and that might be something you want to avoid if you're having rice that's just plain and you don't want it to smell like anything else. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, make sure you watch this video. It's my 4 quick and easy Instant Pot chicken and rice recipes. All of them are phenomenal, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.